My story today is entitled Wiley and the Hairy Man. It takes place up near the Tombigbee River swamp up near Tallahassee, Florida. There was a grandma and her son by the name of Wiley. They lived in the house there, and Wiley, he raised rabbits, and he needed to cut some cane to make a rabbit hutch with, a house for them. So one morning he went to his grandma and he said, "Grandma, I need to go cut some cane out in the swamp, okay?"
All right.
"Well, I'm gonna go now, okay?"
Well, I would advise you to take the 2 dogs with you along with your machete that you normally take.
"Okay, Grandma, but why do I have to take those dogs? They chase everything that moves in that swamp."
Well, Wiley, out in that swamp, there lives a hairy man. Little tiny man, maybe about 4 feet tall. Has warts and moles all over him, and he stinks. And when you get out there, he will try to capture you. And when he does, he's going to put you in a nasty old brown sack. So those dogs, when they see him, they'll chase him off. So you take them with you.
"Oh, come on, Grandma, I don't want to take those dogs with me. They're such a... All right, all right." "Oh, Lord," he said to himself, "I don't believe there's no hairy man out there, but I'll do it just to please her." So they went walking in the swamp. The dogs were sniffing. They chase everything, roaches, snakes. Well, they said, "This is going to take all day. These dogs, come on, dogs!" So they kept walking. And they walked maybe 500 yards into that swamp when they heard a noise coming out of it. And it was a voice. It sounded like this.
Wiley.
Wiley heard the voice, but he thought maybe it might be the wind playing tricks on his ears and his dogs, so they knew there was something out there because the dogs, they turned and looked out in the swamp. Finally, they couldn't stand it any longer. They went, and they went running off into the swamp. And Wiley, he kept on walking. He was a little scared. Now he came to the cane break, and the cane reached way up in the air. And he took out his machete and started to chop it. He went schwack, 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 schwack. When he heard a sound behind him, he turned around real slow, and he looked, and standing not more than 10 feet away was the hairy man. Wiley took one look at him and he went, "Ah!" And he ran for a nearby palm tree and shimmied up and the hairy man, he was as ugly as Grandma said he was. Shoulders were way up around his head like this. He came walking up and he said, "Wiley, how you doing, boy?" And he picked up his machete and he started chopping on that palm tree. He went, "Schwack, yee, woo!" And he kept chopping away on that tree, and Wiley, he had to think of something real fast. So he looked down at the hairy man, and Wiley, he knew some tricks, a little magic, you guys. As the hairy man chopped on the trees, Wiley sang, "Chips, chips, fly away back to where you belong. Chips, chips, fly away back to where you belong." And the wood chips would go around the tree. And they went right back where the hairy man was chopping. The hairy man looked at Wiley, and he looked at the wood chips. He said, "That's a pretty good trick, Wiley. But you know, I can chop even faster." And he started chopping on the tree again. Wiley had to think of something real fast now, you guys. Went off in the distance. He heard his dogs. Wiley cupped his hand up to his mouth and said, "Here, dogs!" And as dogs came a-running, the hairy man saw those dogs. "I hate dogs."
the swamp. Wiley took the dogs, kissed each one on the head, picked up his cane, and started to walk back home. When he got back, Grandma greeted him on the front porch, and she said, "Wiley, how'd you do?" Wiley said, "Pretty good, Grandma. You know, I saw that hair man. He didn't scare me. Dogs chased him off, just like that." "Well," said Grandma, "that's pretty good, because you know tomorrow you're going to have to fool him again." "What?" "You got to fool him a second time," she said. You're gonna have to go out with those dogs. You're going to go out and tie them up to the tree. Can't take them with you tomorrow. And I want you to walk to that canebrake. And when you get to that canebrake, the hair man will be there. And when he walks up to you, don't you climb a tree. You look him right in the face. You say, "Hair man, I heard you can make things disappear." And he'll do that. And then you say, then when he does things like that, you say, "Hair man, I heard you can change yourself into different animals." And he'll do it. You say, "Hair man, turn yourself into an elephant." And he will. When he does that, you say, "Hair man, why don't you turn yourself into a lion?" And he will. Then you say, "Hair man, turn yourself into a little brown rat." And he will. When he does that, you go over, grab him by his nasty little rat tail. You throw him in that burlap sack that he has. You tie it up nice and tight, and you throw it in the swamp and drown him. "Oh," said Wiley, "I don't know, Grandma. Why can't I take my dog?" "No, you listen to me, boy." "All right, Grandma, I'll do what you say. I'll do what you say." So he tied up the dogs. Dogs were starting to cry. "Ooh, ooh." But he did it as Grandma said. Tied them up with a nice piece of rope around that palm tree. He walked off into the swamp with his machete. And no sooner was he more than 100 yards out in that swamp than he heard the noise coming from outside. "Wiley! Wiley!" And Wiley kept walking. He got to the canebrake, started chopping that cane. Schwack, schwack, schwack. He turned around because he already smelled that hairy man. "Hello, Wiley," said the hairy man. Wiley said, "Hello, hairy man." This time he didn't run, remember. He stood to his ground. Hairy man looked at him. "Well, Wiley, what you want to know?" And Wiley said, "Hairy man, I've heard you can change yourself into different animals. Can you turn yourself into an elephant?" And the hairy man said, "Oh yeah." And he rolled in the dirt. And when the dust had settled, there was a big gray elephant, nose to nose with Wiley. Wiley said, "That's pretty good, that's pretty good." He said, "But how about turning yourself into something smaller? How about turning yourself into a lion?" Well, the elephant fell down in the dirt, rolled around. That dust cloud was so big. And when it settled, there he was, a snarling lion. Went Wiley. "Hairy man, turn yourself into something real small. How about turning yourself into a rat?" "All right." And the lion rolled in the dirt again. And when the dust had settled, there he was, a little rat. Wiley walked up to him. He said, "Oh, hairy man, you are so cute. What a sweet little rat. What a sweet little rat." He bent down and he pulled that rat up by his tail. Held him up close to his face. He said, "Rat, I'm going to deal with you once and for all." And he took that rat and put it in that bag, tied it up tight, and went to the swamp and threw it in the water. The bubbles came up, the air bubbles came up as that sack sank deep into the water. And Wiley, "Well," he said to himself, "I'm all done with him." And he walked back and started to cut the cane once again. Schwack, schwack, schwack. And all of a sudden, he stopped. He said, whew! He said, I smell something really funky around here. Whew! And he turned around, and there, staring him in the eyes, was the hairy man, dripping wet. Wiley looked at the hairy man. Ah! And he ran to the palm tree and shimmied up. Hairy man walked over with the machete that he picked up. He said, ha 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 ha. Wiley looked out at the hairy man and said, Hairy man, how did you get yourself out of that brown sack? The hairy man said, I turned myself into a blowfish and I blew my way out, he said. And now I'm coming for you. There's no way you're getting away this time, boy. Well, he started chopping on the tree. Schwack, schwack, schwack. Wiley had to think of something quick. He looked down on the hairy man. He said, Hairy man! What is it? Can you make things disappear? Yeah, I can. Well, how about that tree over there? The hairy man looked at the tree and clapped his hands once. Bing! The tree was gone. Then, he said, Wiley looked down at the hairy man and said, that's too easy. How about making that eagle's nest in yonder tree? Make that disappear. And the hairy man clapped twice. He went, whoo! And the nest disappeared. Wiley said, that's way too easy. He said, can you make all of the rope in the county disappear? And the hairy man said, I sure can. And he went, bow, bow, bow. Wiley had to reach down for his pants because he was wearing a rope belt and his pants were falling off. He held onto those pants, had his arm around the palm tree, and he went, dogs! Because you know what? He tied his dogs up with rope, and that rope that was holding them to the tree had disappeared. When the hairy man heard those dogs coming, he said, oh! And he ran away with that brown sack. Well, Wiley, he was so happy. He walked back with his dogs and his cane. Grandma was waiting for him again. She looked over at him and said, how'd it go, Wiley? Wiley said, just fine, Grandma. That hairy man, he's crazy. So he's easy to fool, just like you said. Oh, that's good, boy, because you know, we're going to have to fool him another time before he finally leaves us alone. Oh, come on, Grandma, said Wiley. I'm telling you, boy, listen to me. Here's what we got to do. You need to go next door, bring me a piglet. And I want you to put that piglet in your bed, covered up with a nice warm blanket. Then I want you to make a big fire in the fireplace. And then I want you to go up in the attic and wait, because I hear, man, he's coming tonight. He's going to come. He's going to try one more time. All right, Grandma. And he did exactly what his grandma asked him to do. Put the piglet in the bed, made the fire in the fireplace, and he went up to the attic and waited. It was a moonless night. The stars came out. While his grandma sat in her rocker waiting inside the living room, Wiley was up in the attic all nervous. He didn't know what was going to happen. When suddenly outside he heard the sound that really started to scare him. Wiley, I'm coming for you, boy. And the hairy man made his way up the side of the house. You could hear the scratching. Scratch, scratch, scratch. He was on the roof. Boom, 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 boom. He was walking towards the chimney. Boom, boom, boom. He was right next to the chimney. Boom, boom, he said. Wiley, I think I'm just going to come down the chimney like Santa Claus. So he went to go head first down that chimney, but you remember, Wiley, he made a nice big fire in that fireplace. First the heat came up that chimney, it singed that old hairy man's face. Ah! He said, oh, it burns! And he jumped down with a thud to the front door. Bam! He said, ah! And he went to the front door and he pounded on it. Bam, 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 bam. While his grandma came up all cool. Who is it? It's me, the hairy man. she can go bad on that old beater of a car you got out in the front yard. I'll make lots of things happen. That's a mighty mean thing to do. Well, I'm just a mighty mean man. Now you just let me in, old lady. Bam, 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 bam. Well, said Grandma, if I give you what's in Wiley's bed, you promise never, ever, ever to bother me ever again? Well, sounds good to me. All right. So she opened the door. Hey. Whoo, 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 Grandma said. Oh, he stinks. Oh, come on in, come on in, come on in, come on in. And he walked in. Boom, boom. Which way is the boy's bedroom? And she pointed down the hallway. And the hairy man walked down. Oh, Wiley, I'm coming for you. And he walked into the bedroom. And he picked up the blanket and carried it out of the room and into the living room. And Grandma said, bye-bye, Wiley. I love you. I hate to see you go. Bye. And the hairy man said, say goodbye, Wiley. Well, they walked out the front door, walked down the porch, walked to the front gate, opened it up, walked out. Oh, Wiley, say something, boy. Wiley, those are cute little piggy noises you're making, but talk like a normal person, okay? When he opened up the blanket, there staring at him was the piglet. Hairy man said, ah! And he looked up at the house, and there was Grandma waving to him. And up in the attic window, there was Wiley going, and the hairy man looked at Grandma and at Wiley at the house, and he said, ah! And he walked back off into the swamp with the piglet. And Wiley and his grandma, they never ever saw that hairy man ever again.